Biggest mistake I ever made in my life. Probably partying too much and ending up doing things I don't want to do.
I could not think of the biggest mistake, but I can think of a small one. Cheating on a test.
Not playing enough sports in high school. Being athletic.
I don't think I can say that on TV.
I don't want to say that.
I've made no big mistakes.
The best mistake I made was probably my daughter. She's the greatest thing that happened in my life. Everything that happens for a reason, so any kind of mistake, so you say, like you learn from it and you just like keep going with your life.
Dating one guy and learning that not all people are really actually nice as you think.
In middle school, there was this boy, and he wasn't like the best guy. He was like a little manipulative and stuff, but I learned a lot, and I'm helping a lot of people who are going through the same thing with their relationships and just like realizing that God needs to be number one all the time.
Trying drugs was a big mistake and very hard to stop. I just regret those things, learn from them, try not to do them again.
It's not being there for my sister when her husband started beating her up and then she died. I believe that next time I'll pay more attention to what's going on.
Not coming to live with my dad sooner because my parents are divorced, and I know that my dad is really the one that cares about me.
Not being able to spend more time with my uncle, and now he's gone.
What are some other mistakes you've made in your life which you learned from? Being violent and fighting people.
I've fighted before, so I regret that so much.
Lying to my parents and then facing the consequences and knowing that I shouldn't do that again.
Picking on my sister.
Not listening to my parents mostly.
Back talking the police, and I have a lot more respect for them now.
Speaking out when you're not supposed to, having respect for other people, and just learning to be more educated and not be such a brat.
In one of his best-known quotes, the inspirational Christian writer Charles R. Swindoll once said,
"Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it."
While making mistakes is a natural and healthy part of growing up,
it's how we deal with those mistakes that can either make us stronger or weaker along life's journey.
Some mistakes we may face may be easy to correct and overcome.
But others, perhaps more serious errors, can lead to self-doubt and long-term regret.
In any instance, we can learn valuable lessons from our mistakes, as well as from others.
We're only human, learning from our mistakes. That's what we'll be talking about today. Hi everyone, I'm Jess.
And I'm Matt.
And this is Real Faith TV. The teens on the street shared how making mistakes is a natural part of growing up.
We'll talk with them more a little later in the show, as well as meet our studio guest.
But first, let's meet our spotlight guest, Marie Ventrone, Miss North Carolina National US 2009.
She'll share how we are all inclined to make mistakes.
And how learning from the mistakes of others helped her to stay focused in high school.
Everyone makes mistakes in their lives. I personally am kind of a scaredy cat, and I've never made a huge life-changing mistake in my life, but I do have a friend that I've learned a lot from. She slacked off a lot during high school, and she would cut class and not study. She wouldn't really participate when she was there, and when it came time to apply for colleges, she had a really, really hard time getting into any. And it was really disappointing for her because all of her top choices wouldn't accept her. And it was a really upsetting time for her and for everyone else to watch her go through it. And it was really a wake-up call. She was a year ahead of me. And I said, wow, now I know I can't do that. I have to crack down. I have to keep on the path that I'm on and go to class and get good grades, participate. Otherwise, I'd be in the same boat she was in. At the same time, I think while it's great to learn from other people's mistakes, everyone has to experience their own mistakes. I had a class where I decided not to get the books for it. I thought I could just kind of coast by, and I was in for a big shock when it came to the end of the class and I had to study for the final exam. I had to scurry around and borrow the books from classmates, get them out of the library. That's one thing that I've definitely learned from, and even though I don't like to study, you gotta do what you gotta do.
I kind of know what you're saying about studying and stuff. I'm not so much the same, but in a similar boat. I'm actually a pretty good student. I've been really fortunate when it comes to that. And I think one of my biggest mistakes throughout my high school career was taking my smarts for granted. And every once in a while I'd get back a test and I was like, oh, if I just put in that little bit of effort, I would have been able to get that much better of a grade. So I think that's one of my biggest mistakes, taking things for granted.
I have like a problem. I just recently learned how to drive. I'm on my permit now. So now my dad's like teaching me behind the wheel. And I guess my biggest mistake is not listening to him. So just the other day I like ran into the trash can and kind of like messed up his car a little bit. So that was like a mistake that I learned, oh, maybe I should start listening more, especially since I'm just learning. So let's meet our studio guests and see what they have to say on this topic.
Okay, they are Kalechi, Vince, Matt, Kelly, Phil, Chris, and Kelly.
So what have been some of the mistakes that you guys have made, and have you always been quick to correct them?
Well, me and my lab partner, we were working on this lab, and I was able to finish early. And there's only like 5 minutes left of the period, and she had like half of a page still to go. So she wanted my answers. So I thought, all right, I'll just help out a friend. So I gave them to her, and a week after, when our teacher was grading us, she called us over, and she was like, you guys have the same exact answers, what happened? And she gave us both zeros. She said that we were cheating, and I learned that you have to accept your own work, and you're not supposed to give it to anybody else.
I remember one time this year, we had to do a research paper, and it was like a 5-page research paper. Then we had like a month to do it, and I just did it at the last minute. It was like 5 a.m., and I was just started typing it. And I was like, oh, I'll do it at lunch. And when lunch came, I was like, lunch or paper? I chose lunch, and all the computers were taken up by the time I finished lunch, and I had to tell the teacher. I had to give it to her later. That lowered my grade.
I know a really big mistake that I've made, that I've actually am trying to come to terms with, is not spending enough time with my dad. And it is a really big mistake because, I deliberately went out of my way not to see him because he was sick, and I was afraid of that sickness. And he passed away recently, and to answer what Matt asked, if you get over it quickly, I think it's something that I'm going to be struggling with to forgive myself for the rest of my life, because it's one of the hardest things I've ever experienced, and it's a mistake that I'm going to have to learn from, to not take all the relationships that I have in my life for granted.
I make a lot of little mistakes, but when it comes to being quick to forgive or get past them, I never do, because most of the time I'll make a mistake and I'll think I'm right, so I won't give up on it until I do finally realize, which could take a really long time.
I think that I'm sort of the opposite of Chris. When I make a mistake, I feel that I am at fault, and sometimes I won't voice that I'm really beating myself up about it. But when I'm quiet, I'm really upset because I'm thinking about it. And the mistakes I make usually, I ruminate on them for a while, and it really gets to me sometimes. But sometimes you have to sit down and think, you're not always at fault. Things will get better. Sometimes, you slip up. Sometimes you make an epic fall.
Yeah, I agree. Like this year, I took some initiative in my school, and I pulled together a retreat. And it was during crunch time. It was the week before the retreat, and I asked one of my team members to do a few things for me. Like, I was handling all the business stuff, and she kind of finished it late. Like, I needed, at one point, she gave it to me like a few hours later than I needed it. And I was exhausted, and I let my tiredness get in the way, and I started getting really mad, and I kind of flipped out at her. But I heard her talking to her friend, and like she was so upset about it, and I was like, oh man, I was really guilty. And when I called her later, I was like, listen, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to. And she was like, no, it's fine, but it still kind of stuck with me, and it was kind of a lesson in how to be a better leader, to accept people's limits, because she had her own things to do, not just what I asked her to do, and I kind of forgot about it.